In this episode of Supply Chain Unlocked, Chad Oginz, CEO of M2X, and I chat about his entrepreneurial journey, the importance of operational excellence, and the role of technology in supply chain management. We discuss the challenges of continuous improvement, and he coined the phrase, the insanity circle. Some entertaining discussion right there. The impact of cloud computing and AI, and how automation can enhance efficiency. Chad shares insights on customer experience, the dream state of supply chain technology, and the balance between job elimination and efficiency in the workforce. Let's get into it.
You're listening to Supply Chain Unlocked. Get exclusive insights from industry leaders on overcoming.
Welcome to Supply Chain Unlocked. We got Chad Oginz with us. Did I pronounce it right that time?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
All right. I wanted you on here. You and I did a pre-podcast. You seem to have had a real interesting background, much like me. You have an entrepreneurial background, one, and two, now you're the CEO of your company, but neither of us got started in IT. And the other reason I really liked talking to you, and I think the audience will too, you don't have that C-level vanity talk going on all the time. It's just that down to earth. This is how I got here. It was a rough and tumble, and I just really enjoy what I do. So that's why I had you on the podcast. Why did you want to be here?
Well, in all transparency, I've never done a podcast, and I think it's time for me to get on and do one. And after researching Supply Chain Unlocked, if you really think about it, how you introduced me, that is Supply Chain Unlocked. It's like it is for the average person. It's not an infomercial. It's not a sales pitch. It's just real people talking, and you're allowed to curse. So I think this is probably a good place for me to start.
Yeah, it's kind of a safety zone for that, and some light politics that we can cover politics as long as it's both sides of the aisle, right?
Absolutely.
I never hurts my feeling. All right, so let's talk about, I guess we'll talk about what was on the pre-podcast and your origin. Just tell the audience about your story, how you, the different businesses you've been in or owned, and what problems you were solving as you went, and how did you land today?
Well, yeah. So I guess the story starts in my working career a little over 30 years ago. I moved from New York City to Atlanta, started my roots in Atlanta. First job that I got was in transportation. So I was interviewing, looking at finance, looking at a little bit of everything. You know, once you come out of college, not much you can offer the world outside of, just being attentive, willing, and ready. So I interviewed with a bunch of companies. And actually, there was this one person from a transportation management company who had a photographic memory, which just intrigued me off the bat. But I realized this guy could be a mentor to me right from the start. So I started with this company called CTMS. They set up inbound logistics networks for some of the largest food service companies in the U.S., U.S. Food Service, Rykoff Sexton when they were separate, Multi Foods, Shamrock Foods, Merit Distribution Services when they were around. So a lot of companies started doing, inbound logistics, building loads, routes by hand. So, computers just started coming out at every desk 30 years ago. I had a 386 laptop where the screen was about this big, where I had to look at map point and Excel, and I would load PO studies and build routes by hand, doing circumference queries and working with procurement, taking a full truckload of Heinz ketchup, cutting it in half, tying LTLs, bring them in, making turns, sheltered savings, a lot of fun stuff. Spent 4+ years doing that on the road every week. Was a great experience. Really got my start in transportation, got my love for it. Every day was a different day. I think, the fun of it and why we're all in this industry is it's problem solving. If you like to solve problems, this is the industry for you. So I went from, inbound logistics to having my own third-party logistics company. Right from setting up the inbound, I thought, hey, I should have my own assets. I can run produce. I can run chicken. I can set up a warehouse. So I got busy setting up 3PL. I was asset-based, non-asset-based. I was a chicken hauler, a produce hauler, worked for Lucent Technologies when they were around. And then, the wheels fell off the bus, and we can say it here, shit hit the fan. The more I grew with my assets, 17 drivers, sets of challenges with each one. One of my drivers stealing freight, stealing tires, fatality accidents, like you name it. I realized there was an easier way to make a living, and I really enjoyed the technology side, the enablement of supply chain, and just switched, went to selling ERP solutions. But from there, I went back to my niche, which is transportation. So focusing on the supply chain, transportation, logistics. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. So I spent 15 years with a optimization company that really focused research, mathematics, applying optimization to white spaces with traditional ERP systems. So that was a lot of fun. And then just these last couple of years, I joined a group called M2X. They are an AI cloud native transportation management solution company. Once you go cloud native, it's all about vertical specific solutions. So we focus on the energy world. So fuels, lubes, chemicals, livestock, dairy, bulk, and then of course, general freight. But each has its own set of nuances. It's the big focus is automating and optimizing the order to cash, saving money, solving problems. So that's it in a nutshell.
So I forgot to introduce your company as well. I will make sure in the monologue before the intro video that that is front and center. Sorry, Chad.
Yeah.
I just jumped right into it. That was the other unique thing that I saw is you focus a lot on agriculture, but you also get into energy and general freight distribution. Has your primary focus been around ag over the years?
No, just until recent, really. When you look at, where I started, it was just really focused on the providing transportation. And then when you get into transportation solutions, that's really where the ag came in. When you look at verticalizing and attacking these verticals, you know, they're all they all end up different on the technology adoption chain. And agriculture, a lot of times, was a lagger. Companies went after the big, sexy looking industries, if you want to call it. And agriculture was, one of the ones that was sort of left behind when you look at really vertical specific functionality. Yeah. So now it's been a big push, and it's a great opportunity. A lot of upside.
So let's get into operating excellence, and I'll define that a little bit, and we'll go with it wherever we feel we need to go. When you think of operation excellence inside the supply chain organization, how do you define it? And to put a little bit more on the tip of the spear there, when we talk about operation excellence, how do you see that for yourself within your company, or how are you helping another organization that you sell your technologies to or have a relationship with? How do they define the operational excellence?
That's a great question. I think operational excellence really starts off with, clear goals. So, what are your operational goals first and foremost? But operational excellence really it's the journey. It's the continuous improvement. You know, your focus is to be better tomorrow than you are today. And operational excellence isn't like a spot that you're going to hit and like, hey, I achieved operational excellence. It's a continuous, it's understanding, defining what you're trying to achieve, what that end all goal is, those metrics, those KPIs, whatever they are. And then it's coming up with a plan that is executable. So it's continuous improvement. You can't boil the ocean. There's so much stuff to fix. It's what's a good plan that you could then, execute against. But it's more of, it's that continuous improvement mindset.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Most of the C-level folks I talk to, they have trouble saying that. And I'll boil what you said down into a few words and then tweak it. Really, it's a culture of continuous process improvement. It's goals and clear goals that are achievable.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
truly it, and I think there's a lot of organizations that really don't understand that as the operational excellence. And so saying that, does your technology or your relationships, because you might get into consulting work, especially if you're in the TMS space, do you provide some of that to your customers in some ways?
Absolutely. Because you have to. When you look at it's about solving problems and challenges. So I know how my technology works, they understand their business. Together, we got to come up with a really good plan. And the only way to achieve that is to come up with, a phased in approach that when you look at change management, because once again, it's people, process, and technology. So it
Hmm.
has to be this collective, engagement. And it really starts with what are you trying to do first, second, third to get to where you need to go. But through that, I think the key is you got to drive adoption. So with, having this continuous improvement, you can have this continuous improvement and then it just disappears after a while. I coined this term, which I should probably truly coin, but it's the circle of insanity that we go through with these implementations. You
Yeah.
spend time, you clean your data, you fix things, and then after a while, you hire new people and the training, the information gets diluted. Then people start working outside the system. Then they blame the system and then they look for a new system and they go through the circle of insanity. But you need to have these checkpoints. So when you have this continuous improvement, you have to have the ability to have this communication feedback loop. So when data goes wrong, who owns it? And it's you got to work on this plan together because it's the only way it's going to work. I can't come to my customer and they say, this is everything we need, because they know from their point and I know what the technology can enable. And collectively, we're going to come up with something, especially understanding the people aspect. How fast could they change? The willingness to change. Where should we change? How many departments do we need to change? People implement software and then they forget to communicate. And you can go implement best software and like, hey, I want to reduce transportation costs, going completely dynamic. Don't worry about static routes. And then you forget to tell your customer, and your customer knows they get a delivery every Monday, and they're calling, "Where's the truck?" And you didn't tell them. It's all these little things. So when I talk about operational excellence and how we're going to work with a client, this is all hands on deck. We got to look at everything, and we got to come up with a plan, and then we got to execute, and we got to enforce the adoption, and then we got to put in those communication protocols to make sure we don't hit that circle of insanity.
So I might have the title to this podcast because you just hit on a golden nugget. The vanity speakers call it CPI, continuous process improvement. What did you call it? The circle of crazy, circle of
The circle of
insanity.
insanity. The circle of
Stand by.
insanity.
We're gonna write that one down. Circle of insanity. And here's why I'm slowing down a little bit. Obviously, you and I have been in the industry long enough to know what the hell we're talking about with the circle of insanity, and that comes to so many technologies. Um, we're going to end up in an AI conversation in a second here. But AI doesn't get you away from the circle of insanity. But AI does help over the long term once you get it started, if you get it started. And where am I going with all this? If you just look at the circle of insanity, when everybody has their eyes on it, they go clean up data. That was one of your points, right? That's
Yep.
just like an AI project or any project in IT. You go out and sorry, I keep getting a call on my laptop. And then you go through all your phases of your project and then you leave it alone. And then you have attrition and all of a sudden things start coming off the rails, if you will, because you're not keeping an eye on it. Or probably, well, as much as that, I'm confident to say that people just continue to drive so fast that they continue to add other stuff to their IT stack. And I mean, whatever it is, whether it's another system that isn't API'd into your system, whatever it is, that other system, they just want to get it in and get it installed, and that's it. And then usually the management in and around that new system is not around 2 or 3 years later. So it just turns into this big continuous insanity circle. Speak to that a little bit because a lot of that CPI, now I'll get back to the actual name CPI, nobody really talks about attrition or never really staying in the CPI loop because they're off to another project. Sorry, that
Yep.
was a lot of thinking
No.
out loud, but here's a golden nugget part of the conversation.
Yeah. It is definitely one of those things that make the project hitting your end goals and not. It's really that support through the rollout and through that first year of going live by yourself after your project team leaves you, your super users go back to doing their regular jobs. It's there got to be somebody that's enforcing all those principles that you set up when you first implemented. And it's also the job of your partner, your technology partner, having those, whether they're quarterly business reviews, just to ensure that they're staying close to the customer. And if your provider's not doing that, the customers need to speak up and say, hey, I need somebody to sit with us every couple of months, make sure that we're trained on it, make sure we're abreast of all the new things that are coming out, especially in the cloud native world. There's new releases pop up every couple of weeks. Somebody just wakes up, shows up in their system, and there's some new functionality on cloud native. It's all being pushed out. It's not like, 10 years ago, everything, they were doing a massive release every year and then they'll send bug fixes. But there's a new release, you get trained, this stuff's all coming at you. So you got to make sure, once again, that you're skating with two skates.
Good point. Sticking with, well, let's veer off a little bit for a second because I think our audience is primarily VPs and C-level folks. I think people don't really understand, at least this audience has fed this to me. What is cloud computing? Because I'd like to go from the old client server type, and we went mainframe client server, and then we rolled into cloud computing. I know there's a bunch of other things in there. Walk us through that. Traditional computing to cloud computing, and then we'll talk about AI.
I guess traditional computing is, yeah, you worked with a software provider, you selected your software, they said this is how much hardware you needed, procure the hardware. Most of the time, your customer took care of their own servers. The software was highly configurable. So, as you're working with the client, there's a lot of different ways to make the software hum. So, you configure the software, you train them. They're the ones that, when the servers go down or you need to upgrade the operating system, and they're doing and supporting their own servers. You're providing the technology, you work together. Upgrades, new releases, new functionality typically will gets paid for by a customer of some sort, or you work on some of the new functionality in the old days. And then there's a predetermined time when it gets delivered. Software stays supported for a little bit of time. You got to pay support fees. That was pretty much the last 20 years of computing till we went to, cloud computing, which really is, prior to that, the first step is, when we went to SaaS. So software as a service, multi-tenant. So where one server and one set of hardware was supporting one client. Now you have a software that's supporting multiple clients on the same stack. A lot of it's more uniform towards best practices. So software went verticalized. Then one good thing when you get to cloud computing on top of that, for those that used to work client server, how you sign on, going through a terminal services or a Citrix. If you didn't have enough power behind it, the software moved very slow. Now that you're in cloud computing, if you need more power, you get it as you need. Everything scales as needed. And then, I think the biggest thing is it's vertical specific, these cloud native solutions and the cloud computing. So it's all about best practice workflows, ensuring that we're arming our clients what vertical that it fits their vertical. I'm not trying to put high tech electronics in a bulk tanker because it's just not going to work.
So, what did cloud computing bring to the world in an efficiency or cost?
Well, I think it's access anytime, anywhere is one of them, and I guess shared cost as well, because you have
Oh, yeah.
multiple people sharing in the expense. I think once again it's the best practices. It's access anywhere. I think one of the other important things is consistent and upgrades, so you don't have to opt into an upgrade. In my previous life, if somebody wanted to do an upgrade, I'd hit them with an SOW and say, hey, it's a couple $100,000 that you need to upgrade. And they're like, I'll pass. What's the new functionality? Not interested. Contact me next year. So I think, now they'll be on the latest and greatest. Companies don't have to go and ask their CFOs for money to upgrade. It's upgrading in real time. So you're always
And
on
it's
the latest and greatest version.
that's because it's built into a monthly or yearly cost, right? That
Yeah.
all upgrades are one, and that makes sense. If I've always said cloud computing is, from a business perspective, is what made multiple endpoints efficient. You didn't have to, like, literally, you can sit there on whatever it is, the phone, the laptop, the desktop, or handhelds of some nature. Everything could efficiently connect to the cloud. and get that information. And I think that that has always helped like C-level people to go, oh, now I get it, because I do remember how I would get feedback on how hard it was. Certain people couldn't do things, or it took all this effort to just bring on phones. Now the endpoint doesn't matter.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
great
just
point.
yeah, it's assumed that if you're in the cloud, nobody really cares about the endpoint anymore. It's not a big
Yeah.
lift. And then I forgot about what your point is. Cloud computing really brought this. We had SaaS, software as a service, previously, but it was kind of clunky. It was in its early days. Cloud computing just like solidified that, made it efficient, and allowed you to scale alongside other companies, is really what that was. And it
Yep.
made it cheaper. You're sharing that cost. You had more guaranteed costs, or you knew your costs more from a SaaS vendor perspective, so you could give them, a monthly rate. Is that a good way of putting it? Maybe I just
Yeah.
put it the same way in different words.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it.
And I keep it there because we can get into the technical sides of it, but this audience will just glaze over and hit stop.
Yeah.
So
And
let's go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and I'm not the most technical, so we're probably better off leaving it here.
Yeah. So let's roll into AI and set the stage for that a little bit. Often, when I talk, especially the C-level folks, and I don't think it has so much to do with age. A lot of people want to say it's age because they don't want to talk about it, because they are old and they're a little bit spent, or they're within that 5 years of retirement and they really don't care. I don't know. But here's how I look at AI from a high level, simple perspective. You have cloud computing. We needed that before to really get AI going. And by the way, everyone, AI started, the first resemblance of it was back in like 1966 or 67. We don't need to go that far back. But cloud computing is what made AI efficient, or the ability to really roll out to the masses. You needed that stepping stone. But if you can picture a workflow, and I really got to create a diagram, if you have a general workflow through a tech stack of any process, whether it's invoicing or dispatching trucks, whatever it is, if that tech stack does not have an agent built into the pieces of it and an LLM, it's not AI. Would you agree with that? And the reason
Absolutely.
I'm slowing down or going this direction with this for a minute is, so often C-level folks and even VPs are, I'll ask them and they run around the bush, excuse me, trying to tell or talk about AI, but they really don't understand what they're buying, so they don't buy. Or they get these projects out there and they try to boil the ocean and they fail. Because like something like 92% of all AI projects that are started with 1,000 employees or better fail. So, with that said, if we understand truly what AI is, what piece of AI do you see? I shouldn't say that. AI in general, what are your customers doing with AI, and what parts of your technology is actual AI?
So I think you introduced it the best in saying AI was around since the 60s. We've been using it. I've been using it in the technologies for 20 years. Machine learning. If you look at just the machine learning aspect, understanding, like if I take it from a transportation perspective, you have a multi-stop truck, you have 5 stops, you know how much product you put on the truck, and you got 5 deliveries, they're all getting different quantities. How do you know what the cost is per each stop? You know what the total is. So how do you assess costs? There's one has to drive 50 miles, one's getting 5 times the amount of volume, one needs specialized equipment. How do you assess these costs? And we've always leveraged machine learning to look at these problems and assign costs so we can get a directional cost of deliveries. What is it going to cost for me to do this delivery? You know what I'm going to charge them for the products. You got to know what your operational profitability is. So we've been always utilizing a lot of AI, you know, since the 60s. We just didn't call it AI. It was machine learning, it was deep learning. There's all these different techniques that we have been using. I think when you look at a lot of the executives that I work with, there always is that fogginess between automation and AI. So that whole aspect. But when you look at AI, it's learning, it's predicting, it's problem solving. So in my arena on the energy side, obviously there's a lot of AI in pure optimization. There's a ton of AI in forecasting methods. So, it's depending on the vertical and what way we're forecasting, document recognition. So drivers taking some pictures of documents, being able to actually take a picture that's legible and then grabbing all the information and then pre-populating it upstream and through other systems from that one document, AI, freight bill audit and pay, matching all that documents. So once again, going from automation to leveraging AI on top of automation, it's deployed a lot of areas already. You know, I think where you're going is, why is it, everybody asking why is so many of these things failing? And I think it's just not understanding what you're using AI to solve. Or it's thinking AI solves everything. I'm just gonna and find out like everything's gonna come right back to you. I
Hey,
think
so
it's
let's stick with that one point, solving everything. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but
yeah,
you're triggering something that I listen to in my sales calls and on this podcast. And what I mean by that is often the real decision makers don't know it because we're talking towards we're not breaking it down into layers for them, frankly. So one thing as you were talking there that you brought up or your points were there's automation and then there's intelligence. I mean, we've been automating things for a zillion years just in the tech stack, right?
yep,
Whether it was APIs over the last roughly 10 years, but just connecting data sources, multiple data sources with special programming called like left and right joins and all kinds of other stuff. We automated it, but there wasn't a lot of intelligence behind it, right?
yep,
There wasn't machine learning. Let's call it what it is.
yep,
And machine learning goes out and just after all of that stuff's automated and integrated, machine learning goes out and gets samples of data and predicts, starts allowing you to predict. And I think this is what C-level folks and VPs don't realize is when you get into AI, you're taking and enabling intelligence into your already automated stack. And
yeah,
I think that's where they get lost because they automatically jump into this whole other thing and then they get their heads to a point where everybody's talking to them, but then it gets to seem too good. And what was the term that you used? So it just seems too good to be true is where they land a lot of times because
uh,
um, pardon, nah, don't pardon my German. It just seems like fucking magic. You see where I'm going? I don't mean to go on that long, but there's this intelligence layer that they already have automation. The LLM connecting their current automation to the LLM or machine learning is really where the intelligence comes from, and it's not fucking magic anymore.
yep. It's that's one of the things when you look at everything has AI in front of it now, and it actually drives me crazy. Right now in our own organization, we're looking at how we can apply more AI, more agentic AI, but we want to do it in reasonable fashion. We're talking to our customers and saying, "Hey, if you had a magic wand and where would you start first and why?" Because that's the next question. Why? We want to understand if it's happening to multiple people so we can then build it, know that the market wants it. But, coming up with all these, really cool, hey, it'd be great if it can sing and dance. Yeah, but what's that going to do for me? And that's a lot of people are buying these shiny objects.
Yep.
Quick story. I had a customer says, "Hey, I want the Uber-like effect. I want my customers to know when my truck's rolling up. I want them to get advanced ship notifications. I want them to see it coming to them. I want all this stuff." And I'm like, that's great. Has your customers been asking for it? No. All right. How's your service level? How's your on time? Good. Was it good? Because once you start sending these notes that the truck's going to arrive at 7 o'clock tomorrow, and now you're running late, and now you're not arriving till 10 o'clock PM tomorrow. It's just like, why are you going to enable all this technology and have this automated information going out if you're not ready to even share that information because you got to fix some things. And then I asked them, then I went from there to his operators and I said, "Do you guys have on-time delivery reports?" Some did, some didn't. How do you define on time? Well, if I get there and I'm unloaded within the time, my appointment time, and the other person says, if I get there within the day, two totally different things. So, once again, there's all these little things going on, and people's like, hey, I just want AI. I want this information to go out. I want to share this. If this triggers this, I want it to make this decision. It's like, wait a second. You're going to let a lot of stuff out of your control, and you're going to throw information everywhere. You just got to have, got to be methodical, got to be well thought through, and, start easy. So that's one of the things that we've been challenging ourselves. We've been using AI, from day one, but it's now, when you have more predicting, more thinking, more decision making, where are we going to put that first? And it's a challenge.
So on the same note of AI, where is your technologies converting customers from manual input to automated?
It's right from inception. So if I take the dairy world right now, you know, dairy customers, whether the haulers or producers, they have spreadsheets coming in, orders coming in from the web. You'd be surprised how many companies have orders coming in through the web and they're not integrated to their ERP for some strange reason. And, they could get email orders coming in from a variety of places, and then they are typing it in. So
Still,
we're
wow.
still typing it in. Like, it's amazing. And we have an order import robot that, if we know it comes in a spreadsheet, or if it comes in, as an email, you just copy and paste it into the system, and the system will pull all the information and populate the order. So you can copy, 500 rows, paste it, and you have 500 orders in 3 seconds.
And
And
you're
as
actually doing that today.
we're doing that today. And then, this is where AI comes in too. So when you get updates, I could get an updated spreadsheet and only 3 orders have updates. Well, when I copy and paste it all, it's only going to grab what changed and update
Yeah.
that information, and then ensure who else needs to know it in the communication tree that those changes happened. So, some right from inception, and then, with data capture with the drivers, being able to capture the data, pull that information out, on the freight bill matching, on the forecasting, optimization. For us, it's within every one of the modules really, but now it's, adding more and more, having, that agentic AI moving more through our system. And the only way for us to truly leverage and bring a ton of value is to work with our clients, is asking them, hey, where would this help you? Let's go through this workflow. How can we make this better?
So when I
Once
look
again,
at the
we need that continuous improvement mindset as a software company.
Yeah, that's difficult with so many changes constantly going on. So what I got out of that was, in that flow, they're getting orders in from multiple sources and in different formats. The automation piece is compiling those in 3 seconds and sending them to the ERP or whatever system they have. Is that a good way to summarize a little piece of that?
Yeah. And then I think, so when you look at that, if there's a couple hundred orders and it takes you a minute or two, you think about how many hours it takes order entry and the amount of people that do order entry. But I think, the biggest value, and the only reason people buy software, is for the benefits. 90% of errors happen at order entry. And that error that happens at order entry permeates through to invoicing.
Yeah.
So if you can correct and not have these errors happen because you're copying and pasting from the source, it's such a win. And a lot of my customers are like, wow, we spent 8 hours a day order entry. Now it's 5 minutes. This is amazing. I'm like, yeah, you're missing the boat. Now, how many errors, have you seen a reduction in invoice errors and pickups and all that stuff? They're like huge. I'm like, that's the benefit.
So when you're talking to clients, do they grapple with this idea of that they may be eliminating jobs when you bring in a technology, and really it's not eliminating jobs, it's making everybody more efficient, not trying to make an ROI where a job goes away? You know where I'm going with this. It's always,
Yeah.
is AI making people more efficient, or is it getting rid of jobs?
you know, be honest, it's a combination of both. Because, some companies have, some extra people on staff just due to the manual nature, and they need to ensure that nothing falls behind. It could remove some, but 9 times out of 10, they're just repurposed, or it's a better quality of life. People are working 12-hour days. If you can get them to a 10-hour day, there's a quality of life enhancement. So it's also repurposing people and working on other projects. So you might say, hey, I can free up this person. This person was better off over here, and now there's a new job. They might be in charge of the data. You might move them to support the system or a super user, or an analyst. There's so many different ways, but there's some head count reduction, especially if they're highly manual. You'd be surprised how many companies haven't hit the digitalization automation, which is, you know, probably 20-30% of the companies out there, believe it or not. So, yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, speaking of that, there's a fairly large fleet that I'm got on the podcast tomorrow, and it's interesting how still paper oriented they are, but they talk like they're not,
I
and so I find it interesting how they really think they're automated, but they're not.
I have customers, they have their mobile, they're capturing the signature, and their drivers go out with 42 pieces of paper. So they have this, and they're still writing on the paper, and they're still handing the paper, and this is going back. And then, it's like, that's why we're here. That's why we're
Yeah,
here. And the adoption and the forcing of
yeah.
new processes.
So, we probably should start landing this plane in a lot of ways, and I think we can get into other areas in another podcast. Frankly, we're over the 30 minutes in general, but if that's okay with you. With that said, what do you feel the dream state is for a company like yourself, and is it truly achievable?
The dream state.
Yeah, you define the dream state. I can't really give you a lot of direction there. What's the vision that you see as a dream state? And if you're
Well,
like, dude, I don't even know where we're going with this.
Well, I'd say, our dream state really is our mission. So when we look at, automation and optimization, a lot of it has to do with just improving the quality of life, for our employees and for our customers' employees, because that's really what it comes down to. So our mission is, making life a lot easier and saving companies a lot of money. Like if you look at, what we're here to do as an optimization and supply chain company, we're here to add visibility and save customers money. So dream state for me is my customers saying, I love it. Thank you. Like this is life changing and, grabbing the market for ourselves. We're in specific verticals. We're not everything to everybody. So for me, able to get market share, with energy, fuels, lubes, distributors, dairy processors, livestock, and making their lives better, that's absolutely utopia. But, really, it's solving problems. Nothing's better than fixing some company's problems and doing this for 30 years. I've had customers multiple times through my life from the different software companies that I've worked. They'll call me and they're like, where you at? Come in here. I want you to listen to my problems. Can you help?
Yeah.
And, that I'm living in a dream.
So I think you said something pretty profound that when I asked this dream state, whether I'm in the sales process or I'm on the podcast, you made a pretty profound. I don't know. You didn't say this specifically, but it was more around personal efficiency. You're making people more predictable for their day, and it just reduces stress. And is that really a dream state for an
Yeah.
organization, making the life more predictable throughout their day?
Absolutely. And I think we can tie this back to AI. I think that's what everybody's thinking AI is going to do for them. Give them the easy button, make it more predictable, put everything at their fingertips. But yeah, dream state. But when I show up to customers or we get notes and emails saying, hey, I can't begin to tell you, this was the first Christmas I was able to enjoy. We had a couple
Mm,
of issues arose, but we were proactive. We knew they were going to happen before they happened. And, just those little things. And that's, that that's the best. That's what gets me up in the morning and lets me hop on a plane and keep running.
yeah, me too. But you're the first one that had a real profound dream state. I don't know if you've called it that in the past, but that was a good one. I didn't see that coming out of you, Chad.
No, and
I'm messing with you.
these are great questions. You had me really thinking.
Yeah. Well, as we bring this plane to a landing, are there any other points around your business, around AI or technology in general that you'd like to give food for thought to the audience?
I Let's see. I think it really just comes down to taking a look at your organization and getting a true understanding of where you're at. And I always put organizations in two categories: vitamins and Vicodins. Is this a company that
Here we go.
is growing? Is it a company that's growing and you need technology as the foundation? So you have the ability to, to build it through with a lot more thought from the ground up, have this nice foundation? Or did you grow too fast? Or is your business having some challenges? You need a Vicodin. So now you have specific pain. So with Vicodins come a different strategy that's prioritizing the pain. So, I think, it really comes down to where are you as an organization and what kind of plan that you need to get you to hit those strategic goals. Because once again, it's what are you trying to do as an organization, and are you growing or is there pain? And then we come in and could have two different plans. If it's a growing company, they'll have a different plan than if they needed a Vicodin.
Vicodin. I'm gonna let that. Maybe I'll
That's
make
that's
the
not mine. I stole
Vicodin.
that.
Huh? Oh, yeah.
I stole that. Well,
I
actually, it's
got you.
vitamin and painkillers. I just changed it to Vicodin. It's
All
two
right.
back surgeries.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll twist that into something a little humorous for the title, or the insanity circle might be the best one
Circle.
there. Dude, I like you, man. You've come up with some good, profound thinking with a little bit of humor. I think people will really like that. By all means. All
Oh,
right,
well,
guys. Go ahead.
I
Sorry, my bad.
I appreciate you inviting me. This was fun. It was
Yeah.
thought provoking.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's interesting how often the conversations end up into, for me, they're, Teddy, how can you help me grow my company by acquiring more customers or things like that? Reason I'm even bringing that up is we can all help each other even after the podcast. I think we both got to get to other meetings, but again, thank you very much for your time, Chad. I will have your company name M2X in the monologue, so we
Yeah.
get that up front. And I tell you, you've really added some value packed information and insights for our audience. And I truly appreciate it, because that's the feedback I get all the time is I'm looking for like real insight. And I think we covered that by breaking down cloud computing and moving it into an AI conversation. And that's what a lot of people need right now. So with that said, thank you for your time. The audience appreciate your time if you made it this far.
You're listening to Supply Chain Unlocked. Get exclusive insights from industry leaders on overcoming